Hi, everyone. I'm going to explain some people from the Russian Revolution, some of the historical ties that will help you understand Animal Farm a little bit better. And then I'm also going to give you some terms that you'll need to know as you're reading the novel and analyzing it. For this first part, if you'll take notes either in your journal or in a piece of notebook paper, as far as the people in history that were involved in the Russian Revolution. And then for the terms, I have a place for you to write down those meanings and definitions on the handout that I gave you. So you can see that the Russian Revolution that we're talking about, otherwise known as the Bolshevik Revolution, happened in the year 1917. Tsar Nicholas II was the Russian equivalent of the King of Russia. He was not a great leader, especially compared with some of the Western kings of the time. He was a cruel leader. He was sometimes even brutal with people who opposed him. But he was sometimes kind. He did things like hiring students as spies to make money. So he did have some good qualities as well. I think the negative qualities outshadowed the positives overall, for a lot of people anyway. And he was eventually, overthrown and replaced as the Russian leader. Karl Marx, you may have heard of before. Karl Marx was the inventor of communism. His suggestion in his Communist Manifesto is that workers of the world should unite and take over the government. He actually died before the Russian Revolution started, so his ideas spurred it along, but he wasn't actually a part of it physically. Vladimir Lenin implemented the Russian Revolution. So he took Marx's ideas and he was the one who actually set it all into action in Russia. And Lenin had been exiled by Tsar Nicholas II. So his ideas were not popular with the person in power at the time, because the Tsar realized that he could be dangerous. These are kind of three principal ideas behind communism. Simplified, some of you may know a lot more about this than others, but in a communist society, all people are equal. The government owns everything, and in turn, the people own the government. So we'll see how this plays out in Animal Farm, and you'll want to look for the system of government that the animals create that is parallel to communism. Leon Trotsky was one of the two leaders of the Russian Revolution. He was a pure communist. He thought that they should be following Marx's teachings exactly, not straying from those original ideas. And he wanted to improve life for everybody in Russia. But Trotsky was chased away by Lenin's KGB, which is the secret police. So that kind of stricter following of Marx's teachings did not end up happening the way that Trotsky envisioned it. Joseph Stalin wasn't a great speaker. He wasn't as educated as Trotsky, and that came across when he delivered speeches. He did not end up following Marx's ideas, even though that was kind of the start of everything. Stalin loved power, and basically he killed anyone who got in his way, anybody who opposed him. Stalin is the one who used the KGB, the secret police, to his advantage. He allowed the church, he allowed religion, which we'll talk more about later as we're seeing what's happening in Animal Farm and why that might be significant for Stalin. And he used propaganda to spread his ideas and to get people to agree with him. So as we read Animal Farm, see if you can pick out which animals represent the characters from the Russian Revolution. And you have a character list on the front of the handout that you'll use as you read as well. Right, here are these terms relating to communism on the back of the handout. The first one is disinformation, which is, just like it sounds, false information, but it's spread by a governing body in order to deliberately deceive. And then discrediting former leaders, again, that sounds just like it's stated. Current rulers who deny the positive contributions of those who ruled before. Then indoctrination. If you know the word doctrine, it's a set of beliefs. So indoctrination is teaching someone to accept a set of beliefs without questioning them. Just kind of blindly accepting those beliefs. Propaganda, you may be familiar with from history. Propaganda is media that have the sole purpose to persuade people to support a particular religious or political cause. In this case, it's mostly political. When we're talking about the Russian Revolution and when we're looking at what happens in Animal Farm. Sloganeering is the use of slogans or short, kind of catchy phrases, trying to persuade people by repeating these phrases rather than explaining ideas and rather than having them question what's actually behind the slogans. Sloganeering happens when the people who are in power are trying to be in power. They don't want people to actually think about what's behind what they're saying. Okay, and then these are literary terms that we need to know. I'm going to talk about these out of order, and you can fill them in at the bottom of the handout, your notes sheet. Let's talk about allegory first. Animal Farm is an allegory, which is a narrative that has underlying symbolic meanings. An allegory can be read on two different levels. So you have the story, you have the plot, what happens in the story, but there is an underlying symbolic meaning to pretty much everything, every character, every event. In this case, Animal Farm is an allegory that parallels the events in the Russian Revolution. You should have heard about that in the George Orwell video that I shared with you last week. And you can always go back and watch that again if that's helpful to help you make connections between these. A fable is a short narrative that shares a moral or a practical lesson about life. And a beast fable in particular has principal characters who are animals. So Animal Farm is a beast fable, meaning its principal characters are animals. And it's also a narrative that is going to share a practical lesson about life. Satire, hopefully is not a brand new term to you, but a reminder. Satire uses wit, sarcasm, or humor. It's a work that mocks or critiques a person or an element of society in some way. Irony, again, this is probably a review for you. Irony in general is a contradiction between appearance or expectation and reality. So something seems different than what it actually is, or someone expects something to be different than it really turns out. And then specifically, dramatic irony is when the audience understands something that a character doesn't understand. The failure of a character to see or understand what is revealed to the audience. So I hope these terms help you to understand Animal Farm a little bit better as you start your reading.